The upcoming video is a special clip from our Soaring Stars Academy professional development. Let's get to it.
Here's why assessments were such a challenge for me. Movement has been a key part of my classroom structure for the last 5 years, where I believe strongly that movement is the starting point for wiring the brain for learning. I brought that into my classroom. I brought that through scarf dancing. I brought that through movement breaks. I brought that through providing my students with effective experiences versus lectures, not talking over 10 minutes. I had that. And I also would end every lesson with the idea that I was going to provide an assessment, and ending every single lesson giving myself the excuse that I didn't have the time. I knew data collecting was important. I loved being able to show the growth of my students, but I loved doing that by showing my principal what my students were achieving through concerts, through them coming in and seeing what I did with my students. I didn't like stopping my lessons in order to go through that. Here were the problems that I continually found with giving my students assessments. It took so much of my class time. Every single time I handed my students a piece of paper and said to myself, I need this data. It would never take 5 minutes. I'd always think that it would take 5 minutes, but it would usually end up taking 10, 15, 20. On a really bad day, felt like the entire lesson was dedicated to this one thing, and it wasn't an experience. Students were bored with my assessments. Students were rushing through with my assessments. Students were not taking the time to do them well, to do themselves justice. Students were not giving themselves the chance to show what they had learned. And every time that I got my data back, I know it was not accurate. This was the third problem that I found with providing assessments, is my students were feeling stressed about it. These were never fun lessons. If I gave my students the time to prepare that there was going to be an assessment, they'd be stressed about it. If I did a more so of a pop quiz, just, all right guys, we're going to do a quick worksheet, it would constantly stress my students out. And because of that, and then the frustration that I felt because I knew they were cheating, these were the reasons that I kept telling myself, I'm the teacher who does things. I don't need to be the teacher who takes assessments. But I wasn't the teacher who was providing myself with enough data to give an accurate assessment of how far my students had come. I knew they had come far. I could tell they had come far. I saw my students making progress in so many ways, but did I have the data to back myself up? No, because I found these problems too much for me. If you're somebody who's also watching this going, yes, I have the same trouble with assessments, drop a 1. If you're going, you know what, assessments have never been this much of a stress to me, but I am excited to learn about how you're going to incorporate movement into it, drop a 2. Moving assessments that matter. There's going to be assessments that are going to be for retention, for data collection, and for a memorable experience. I have 3 different ones that we're going to be looking at today. We're going to have some card games that we're going to look at. We're going to have coloring sheets that we're going to look at. And we're going to have some movement that we're going to be looking at. And I hope I can add a little bit of a twist to each of these. First, let's start with the card games, right? These are going to be able to be both digital. If your students have Chromebooks or tablets or whatever you have, they're going to be able to be digital, or they're going to be able to be printable if you cannot do that. All right? I obviously am going to give plenty of directions. Again, don't really have time to read this all, but I hope that it is understandable for all of you wonderful, wonderful teachers. All right, so these are our rhythm cards, right? And we're going to look at this now, all right? Here is just a little review that I'm providing in this slide so that if you need to go over this with your students, you're going to go ahead and go over it with your students, right? I like to go over it with the rhythm break, which I know a lot of you have looked at before. All right, if you haven't looked at this, then let me just show you real quick. I'll get out of Javon's Google copy so you're not having a rhythm break. I don't think Javon really necessarily needs that in his life right now. This is our rhythm tree, just going over it real quick. I love the rhythm tree because it not only provides a really great visualization for the students as we build this. I find that what I do in order to go over it is I first have students just do call and response. This is a whole note. It gets 4 beats. I say, everybody hold up that 4 for me. We're going to put it on top of our tree. It is a whole note. Now take a knife. It is very sharp, so be careful. We're going to take that whole note and cut it in half. This is no longer a whole note. This is a, it gets And this is how I go over it, just getting the students to get a little tactile, a little bit of movement, but not a ton at the beginning. Again, we want to give the students who need those visualizations the chance to visualize, and then we're going to give the students the chance to move. I always say that an eighth note, because again, it's such an abstract concept that two things actually only equal one beat. So if this helps you, I hope so. What I do is I say, show me half a beat on one eighth note. Good, now show me half a beat on another eighth note. Now what happens when these half get too close? They make a shoomp bar. Now that bar, hold it the other way. It is one beat. Half plus a half. If I have half a pizza plus another half of a pizza, I have one pizza. Right? And then going into the 16th notes. Same kind of thing. Alrighty. So afterwards, I have the students stand up. I've done this a whole bunch of times. I hope you guys have already seen it, but we say the whole note slide. Stand on one side and you go the whole note slide. Half note, fancy bow, quarter note, jumping, eighth note, jumping jacks, eighth note, jumping jacks, 16 note, run, 16 note, run, 16 note, run, 16 note, run. Right? All of those together, then you switch them all up, you mix them up, and then you take out the words, right? All of this creates this wonderful experience, gets the students up on their feet. I'd really only say to use it for probably as young as, I'd say, second grade. Second grade is when I might start showing this, and up until probably fifth grade, if you can get away with it. By the time they get to fifth grade is when they start going, oh, I don't need to move. They're lying to you. They do need to move. You just have to do it in sneakier ways. All right, so that's how I go over it to start, just as a way to give them a little refresher on what these beats mean. All right, so that's where you'd have your students draw a line from the whole note itself to the word whole note. You can do that virtually, or if you need to print it out, then it's right there for you, okay? Same thing. All right, afterwards, you're going to have your students matching pairs. All righty, now walk your students through what is a pair, a whole note, two, actuals note, half note 2, quarter note 2, eighth note 2. I didn't add 16th notes for these patterns just yet. All right, now again, I said these are card games. They're just matching cards, but we're trying to make it a little bit more of a challenge for students. A little bit more interactive for our students, a little bit more engaging for our students. So these have 13 pairs, right? 13 different sheets that are all in different orders, all that kind of stuff, right? These are the printable versions. I'll show you the digital versions as well. Again, if you spot something that you're going, Leanna, doesn't make sense, tell me. I did 13 because I figured 2 on each. Playing the game together equals 26. These are easy to just go copy paste, add a couple more, so on and so forth, right? But what's different about them is there are going to be some movement cards in here, right? As your students are playing the game, if they find a whole note slide, they have to match it to a whole note slide. And before they can collect, they have to do the quick movement pair, right? They have to do that on their own. So once they do the movement, that's their pair. They get to keep it, right? So if we're looking at something like this, here's the whole note. It can match with this. Here's the eighth note jumping jacks and an eighth note jumping jacks. That's a pair right there. Again, these are going to be all cut out and so on and so forth, but they're going to be cut out. If you find one of them and you find the other one, you can't collect it until you do the movement break. The last thing on here that's a bit of a a little bit more engaging, is if they find a note. If they find a note, it's going to have a number, they're going to have a letter, and they have to figure out the letter. So if you haven't gone over treble clef, this is a great time to do that. Bring it up to the teacher. You are helping to solve the secret song. Here is our secret song. This level is easy, but the songs get harder and harder. So what's going to happen is you're going to have your pairs, and as they go through, you're going to have your students competing against each other. Yes. If they find a movement pattern, then they can't take that movement until they remember what the movement sounds like, what the beats are, etc. And they're going to have a number and a note. They're going to go up to the teacher and say, all right, I found a number. There's no pair for this one. The second you find that, that's yours, right? Once they, oh no, I'm wrong. There it is up there. I was hiding it from myself. Here's the number. Here's the number. And they're going to be different because each student can get their own. Or maybe one student gets lucky and finds both of them, right? Up to your discretion whether or not you tell them, all right, each one gets one. Because again, that's just that little bit of movement that student might need to come up and tell the teacher, I got number 1 and it's on the letter E. Might be all that the student needs. But then what you're going to do is you're going to go to number 1, or maybe you have a student do this if you have a smartboard. You're going to tell them to grab the note, which, because I use pitch hill and my different letters for boom whackers, bells, and so on and so forth, that's do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Don't know about the colors for boom whackers and bells? I doubt it, but just let me know. We'll go ahead and over it. But then you're helping to solve the secret song, right? I'm trying to take these card games and I'm trying to make them more effective. If you think these are going to be effective, go ahead, drop a 1 in the comments, right? What I'm hoping is not only are you going to be able to play with a partner, you're going to be able to, 2, get up and move a bit. You're going to be able to, 3, find something that the entire class is working to do together. Every single person has to have one number that they are bringing up to the teacher to say, this is my number, this is the note that I have. And only with everyone working together at the end are you going to have a full song that you can then do on boom whackers, right? Maybe you're doing it on Orff instruments. Maybe if you have an mbira, that's what you're doing it. Rose says, I love the secret song. Amy says that this is a 1. It's going to be helpful for their classroom. Fantastic. We hope that it's wonderful for your classroom as well. All right. The secret song is one of my favorite parts. I'm not going to lie, Rose. I thought that was really cool. All right. Not to toot my horn. I hope not. All right. Here are all the different combinations because, again, each one is going to have different notes that go along with it. So the tough thing about this is if you are printing this out, making sure that they don't get mixed up can be tough. Thank you, Amy. She says, I love the team building this creates. Yes, one person cannot do this on their own. They have to be working together. And if one student is going, oh, well, I don't know this note, you better believe about 7 are going to go, oh, well, let me help. They want to know the secret song, especially if you make it a big deal that it's a secret song. Oh, they're going to want to know. Oh, they're going to want to know. Alrighty, so these are the different cards. Again, if you're doing it with the digital version, it is a little easier to keep it all where it's not going to get all crazy. These are your digital versions where I tried to make it so that students can only touch what they can touch. They're going to write their name on it. They're going to write what number you assign them, because here's all the slides. Now, if you want, if you're in Google Classroom, just assign each student 1. But if you don't want to go through all that because you ain't got the time for that, totally understand it. Just write down the slide that you assigned them. So say Justin is assigned slide 5 and his partner is Javon. Why not? You and Justin get along. What they're going to do then is here are their slides. They take, they pull. That's an 8th note. Okay, they found an 8th note. Let's see if we get a match. Nope, didn't get a match. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click undo. And I'm going to click undo. All right, it can be a little tough for our students to go through and not get all these squares mixed up. It might be easier if you're doing this on a one-on-one basis, which can also be a very fun activity for you and your student if you ever have that one-on-one time to play this with them. But if they're old enough, say 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, where you can trust them to move, nope, undo. Fantastic. Would I give this to kindergartners? Probably not. If I was doing this with kindergarten, which this sounds a little scary for me to do with kindergarten, I'm not going to lie to you, right? I would probably do the printable version. I'd print all these out, right? I'd cut them up. I would paper clip them together, and I'd put them in wonderful individual baggies and say, do not let this baggie get mixed up with that baggie, right? Okay, this is level easy. The song that goes along with it is finished for you at the bottom right there. Mary had a little lamb, little, etc., etc. So you can also change, when it's a half note versus when it's a whole note, right? But that's the easy level. What I wanted to do is make sure that these games, these card games, can grow with your students. So there are the secret songs, but here's also, there we go, level medium. It gets a little bigger, right? And the song gets a little more complex with a couple more challenging rhythms, wider variety of notes. And then here's our hard level. Still, each one comes with a digital version and a printable version. But now here's our hard song. You can tell there's some dotted rhythms in there. There's some solo eighth notes. There's some triplets, all right? And it's a little bigger. Again, way more complex. This can take up, if you want, an entire lesson, but it's an entire lesson where they started by going over their rhythms. They did the rhythm tree. You can use this to go over treble clef letters. You can use this as team building. You can use this as a way to play through a song together, to talk about these complex rhythms. Yes, this might take up your entire lesson, but it is not them sitting the entire time. It is not them sitting while you have to gather this data. You can gather this data because, oh, I almost forgot one of the best parts. They're going to be writing down what their pairs are on this sheet as well as on this sheet. They're going to be saying what each note's name is. Again, I tried to make it so that they could only touch the things that you want them to touch, right? Did you find a letter? Write it in the box, right? You're going to have this data at the end, but it will have been gotten through an experience and not through them sitting there and taking an assessment that has taken up your entire class time, and the students leave going, that was so boring. This is going to be an experience, I hope, that you and your students will both enjoy, right? If you think this is going to be something that you're going to want to bring into your classroom, fantastic. Again, take a look back at your mission statement. Does it help to foster what you're trying to build in your classroom?
Looking for how to get the rest of this professional development for free? Simply sign up for a free month at the Soaring Scribes Academy, where we will also be giving you a free digital download of our Soaring Scribes Academy workbook, or pay a one-time fee. Both links are in the section below. Thank you for watching this Soaring Scribes Academy professional development, and happy playing!